Hello, I'm FYX Toycat, and how to kill the warden? Me. Just build up 4 blocks high and hit it. And this sounds like a great idea until you realize the developer behind the warden, KingBDogs, responded to someone on Twitter saying the exact same thing, and he responded saying, well, you can see how that works out for you in game. And I absolutely love this response of just, yeah, you can stack up as many blocks as you want, but it's not going to stop the warden being able to hurt you. And I actually like this. If this is meant to be the natural disaster, dangerous mob, it makes sense that you can't just do the exact same thing you can with every other mob, and that's why this next question is quite interesting as well, because in response to Nico Koishi, can't we just kill the warden by hitting it in a 1x1 hole like you can do with literally every other mob in the game? Well, this question to KingBDogs was, will it be able to counter a player just digging into the walls? I assume it will, but just wondering, and he says you'll have to find out, smiley face. And that to me sounds like another fun little hint. I love that he's not trying to hype this thing up too much anymore, instead just going for the whole, yeah, you can wait and see. If you've got an idea on how to beat the warden, give it a try when it comes out. And to me, it sounds like a lot of the design process of the warden now is probably making it behave not like other mobs. It's probably making it so it is a real challenge, and that means that whenever we do work out, and believe me, the community will work out an easy way to kill this thing, it will be at least a somewhat complex and unique method that won't be useful against every other mob, and that's all I'm asking for. I think making it impossible to kill on your first day in Minecraft would be an impossible ask, but at least make it something where you have to know how to do it, and it has to be something that doesn't apply to the rest of Minecraft. That is more than I've ever expected. So with that said, let's move into the next question now, because Vamplays28 says, is it only me, or does deep slate redstone ore look like ruby ore? And I kind of see it. Here is ruby ore, here is deep slate redstone. Personally, I think deep slate redstone looks significantly better, but I guess I can kind of see the comparison. However, this is the reason why rubies will never be added. Once every 6 months or so, there's a huge, rumor that like, ooh, they're gonna finally add rubies to the game. And given this is the cave update, the caves and cliffs update to be precise, wouldn't it make so much sense for them to finally add that? But this comment proves exactly why they can't add that. First of all, rubies were the early version of emeralds. The purpose of rubies has been long supplanted by a green looking ore, and the reason for that is because Dinnerbone, the developer working on it, was colorblind. Even if Dinnerbone's not colorblind, and he's not doing too much development these days, lots of people who do play Minecraft are colorblind and would not be able to spot ruby versus redstone. I mean, the fact that even you can say, yeah, they look really similar just to the appearance, you should be able to tell by color alone what various ores are, but if you can't spot colors, you should be able to spot them, and here's the big reason we won't see rubies, at least not in their current form, or I guess their current form, I mean their form from 8 years ago, because they haven't been touched since then. This is one of those comments that I just know we get to see once a year, and I'm excited to respond to it next year when people are like, ooh, a ruby's been confirmed, and then saying no, they're not, unless they really are one time. I mean, it's funny because one of the first things that was shelved in Minecraft was the quiver, and then it came back for 1.9, and then they got rid of it again, which I thought was a beautiful ending to that. But we did eventually get a crossbow, so you never know with Minecraft. Things can always come back from the past. It's just unlikely that rubies will, because they don't. They don't have a purpose right now, and given that they're really working on making Minecraft geologically accurate, which sounds dumb, but it is in fact true, I don't think there's going to be much future for the rubies in Minecraft. Speaking of a future for the rubies in Minecraft, let's talk about the way you'd find them, which is mining, because Chain Thunderbolt says, with the fixes to mining, I think this means the demise of iron farms and gold farms. Do you think that certain biomes will have more of an ore like the Mesa? So first of all, I want to say iron farms and gold farms won't be going away magically. I mean, still, if you want to AFK and get a bunch of resources, there isn't going to be a mining alternative to that, so, like, people will still use those things. It just means that they're not going to be as necessary for the sort of player who wants 1,000 hoppers. But then the second part of this question is, do you think certain biomes will have more of an ore like the Mesa? Right now, you find gold in Mesa, you find emeralds in mountains. Will there be other associations? I would love it, and again, right now, they're still in the early phases. I would love it if they tweaked the layout of certain ores based on the biome. For instance, what if we found way more lapis underneath plains biomes? That would encourage you to dig there. But now that we have cave biomes, why stop there? Why stop with like, oh, lapis equals plains? Why not instead have each type of cave biome be more responsible for a certain type of ore? Wouldn't it be really interesting if these dripstone caves spawned with a bunch more redstone inside of them, so you knew when you found dripstone caves you're in the right place for that? Or if something just as simple as like, yeah, you find a lush cave, you know there's going to be iron here because it's at the right level. There's lots of different fun options they have for making ore frequency vary by biome, and I do hope they'll play around with that. But again, right now they're in the early phases of making new ore distribution work across double as wide caves, so I'd expect to see this be a few weeks away, but maybe I'm crazy about that. Speaking of being crazy, Braxton Pritchard thinks that I'm going crazy for saying that exploding crossbows don't exist, and technically speaking, you can put a firework in a crossbow. That is in fact true. However, calling it an exploding crossbow, calling it the secret weapon against the Warden, is definitely misleading. Again, if you don't know, you can put any firework in there, including one with a firework star, and if you get hit within a certain distance of a firework star, it does a tiny bit of damage, but it really has to be overstated. It's tiny. It's a very small amount of damage. In fact, I've always said fireworks are effectively flashbang grenades the way they work. You know, they do a tiny bit of damage, but then they blind you for a few seconds while the effects are there. I would love for that to be a thing against the Warden. I would love for you to be able to just set off some fireworks and for the Warden to be terrified by the noises and run away, because he's got super sensitive hearing. That's why you have to sneak around him. So wouldn't it be interesting if perhaps the secret weapon against the Warden, the make him go away thing that they've been talking about, if you don't know, last week, King B Dog said that they were looking to have some late game alternative. Why not just make it something like fireworks? So it's theoretically, you know, you get those a lot more in the late game, but also you can make them in the early game if you want to. I think that's a great way to add choices to Minecraft that the new player probably isn't going to spot. Speaking of things the new player isn't going to spot, the silencing enchantment is a really great idea for boots. I think that if they are going for something which is literally only obtainable by doing some late game procedures, I think having a potion or having an enchantment for the silencing is a great idea. In fact, I don't hear of many effects or enchantments that are actually brand new, interesting, quirky, useful in different way ideas, but keep fighting. I just want to mention, this is like one of the few really, really good enchantment ideas I've heard in a while. I think Minecraft kind of boxed themselves in very early on with enchantment ideas, and it's been, again, whenever we get a new enchantment, it always feels a bit forced and a bit like, does that need to be that way? But I think having silent boots would be really great for the Warden and for any, PvP experiences. When you're running around, you don't want people to spot you. Are you going to waste a enchantment slot on that? That's for you to decide. Speaking of things you can decide, Onion Pie says, Toycat, can you please reply? And so with that said, let's move to the next question from True Redemption. Bro, where the never height limit at? And to answer your slightly incorrectly spelled question, the never height limit is going to be staying the same in this update, at least right now. I mentioned in a video that now they have the possibility of changing the height limits for the other dimensions. However, it was effectively stated by King Big Dogs himself, actually, in response to that video that, like, yeah, these are options, but we're not going to be immediately revisiting them. But the idea of raising the height limit and the depth limit isn't to take advantage of it right now, right this second, but instead to kind of use it as a tool they have in the future. So if we see a never update v2, if we see a end update, then we can start to see those height limits changing. But for now, they're keeping the never as is. And so a question I've seen a lot is like, so then how will it work if you have a nether portal at negative 64 on the bedrock layer now, and the bottom layer of the nether is, layer 0? How does that going to work? And it's like, yeah, it's exactly the same with when you place a nether portal at Y256. The nether is 128 blocks on all platforms. For whatever reason, it just brings you down to the height limit. I think that is a not ideal solution. I think that's one of the biggest reasons they need to increase the height limit in the nether and maybe have some more vertical based biomes. I would love to see a nether that is 3 times the height, which they can theoretically do whenever they want, but they have chosen not to do it, and we'll have to see if they revisit that decision in the future. But again, seems unlikely because they just had a nether update literally 8 months ago. But with that said, let's speak about the next question, because the Nest Minecraft and More says, hey Toycat, do you think you'll finally retire this Let's Play world after they release 1.17 with the new world regeneration and build heights? And I sadly have to say it, I don't want to, but I have to. This is a dumb question, I'm sorry. Of course I'm not going to be dropping the world. I think there are a lot of people who are saying, yeah, should I get a new world or should I not? I'm not too sure. The answer is, like, generally speaking, it makes sense to keep your Minecraft world. That's something I've always been an advocate for, and 1.17 isn't going to be that different to previous updates in terms of, like, oh, if you want the new features, you have to go to new chunks, but it's really not that hard to find new chunks in your world unless you've explored a ridiculous area. If you've explored literally every chunk in a ridiculously sized area, let's just say 40,000 by 40,000 blocks, every single chunk in there is explored, then what you need to do is you need to go to the nether and you need to make a 5,000 block ice pathway. If it's 100,000 blocks you've explored, then it needs to be a 12,500 block ice pathway. But the truth is, when you use blue ice and you use the nether together, you can go places fast enough that it's really not going to be the biggest of concerns, especially because even after 1.17 comes out, it will be fun to experience, but it will still be just 5% of the total content or 10% of the total content. It's going to be really easy for my Let's Play world for me to find new chunks of that in, and I'm looking forward to maybe fighting the Warden and maybe getting my absolute being pushed in as a result. With that said, let's move into the next question, which comes in from Nicholas Thompson, who says, what happens if we mine from a new chunk to an old chunk? Do we just get free access to the void? And again, this is such an interesting one to me because that is, I think, the default solution if they did nothing besides keep existing chunks how they will, which is always their intention for the most part. I think this is an exception, but if they keep existing chunks how they are and they make new chunks generate down to -64, what you'd get is a situation like this. As you can see, in an old chunk, the void is below Y0. In a new chunk, the void is below -64, but in that gap in between, you'd see a wall that you could mine through, like this. Again, this is very scientific diagrams, thank you, I do my best. You'd be able to mine straight through into the void, which I think would actually be really cool, but what I think is more likely, even though we've only ever seen this on the console editions, obviously 4J isn't a part of Mojang anymore, or they don't work for Mojang anymore, but you can see how, like, what you do instead is you make a bedrock wall. That's probably what they're going to end up doing. I actually think that this problem by itself and the idea of making a bedrock wall, again, which has been done for the Never in the Xbox 360 editions, etc., I think that this is probably the easiest, but it's still not especially easy compared to just taking all the existing bedrock in your chunks. Again, no one wants bedrock to be there, it just is there, it's the fundamental force of the world, and converting that into deep slate. However, the majority of the world, I did this poll on my YouTube community post channel, and as you can see, the majority of people actually disagree with me about this one being a likely option, so I'll admit that that's just like my little pet project after I saw it in a previous Q&A Saturday. I would love for that to be an option. I think they'd have to make it an enableable option in the settings, like the Make Infinite button, but it's still something I would love to see. I think in reality, though, we'll see the bedrock wall, or maybe even they'll go with, again, to take another console feature, it will just be a invisible barrier. But again, I think Minecraft is the sort of game that will try to avoid an invisible barrier if possible. I would, if I was in charge and I couldn't have my preferred feature of the, like the Grimstone replacing bedrock, then what I would do instead is I'd just be like, yeah, dig into the void. You can see it's the void, don't jump out there, idiot, which I think is a fun idea. Also, let me know which of these solutions you like the most, though, because with that said, I'm going to move into the final question here, because Secret1 says, so is anyone watching his old videos? This wasn't a Q&A Saturday question, they were just commenting on this one video, episode 374 of the Let's Play, in case you're curious. They were just commenting, oh, it's called Why You Probably Don't Want to Be Robbed, which I think is a high-quality title, by the way. And I think it's really interesting, because a lot of people assume with a YouTube channel that the daily upload, in my case, like, whenever I upload a new video, that's where most people are watching, right? Interestingly, with my channel at least, in the average week, about 2 million video views will happen, and only about a fifth of those to a quarter of those will be on the videos that I uploaded that week. Most people are watching videos that weren't uploaded in a given week, and that's something I've always tried to aim towards. I want to make, ideally, as evergreen content as I can, so like, you can watch it back in a few years. A few of the references might be dated, but like, there's still a lot to be learned. That's the reason why every few years there's like subtle shifts in various content flows, because it's just like, yeah, I feel like I've done enough of this, rather than just remaking that same video, every couple of years. Why not instead just move into an entirely different category? And yeah, that's why you won't see I tried to run a server like the Soviet Union again on this channel, because you can go back and watch that if somehow that was your first video, like for a lot of people it was. If you want to go back and watch 10 mobs and their weaknesses, or the 8 Never mobs and their weaknesses, you can go find those videos as well. I think the point of this channel is that, like, yeah, if you want some stuff, you shouldn't have to wait for the new one every day. You can go back and you can find whatever video you want when you want. If you want to learn about why you should why you shouldn't be robbed, that's a great idea too. The only thing I ask is don't go back and start watching the Let's Play from the beginning. I cringe at watching old Toycat, and you know what? You don't deserve the cringe. Don't do that to yourself. And speaking of things you shouldn't do to yourself, this is the end of the Let's Play, which is where I tell you, you know what? I'm not going to make you feel bad about not subscribing or turning on that notification bell. I mean, sure, I'm trying to hit 2 million before the end of the year, but that's not your problem. What your problem is making sure you don't die in a house fire. And did you know 99% of house fires, greater than that actually, happen to people who aren't subscribed to the Toycat channel? I'm just saying, you can do what you want with that information, or you can have a nice day anyway, because it might be your last. Goodbye.